Hi guys, it's Blackie for Shaman's Forge Bushcraft. Today I'm going to talk about a little tip or trick or modification for the K-bar knife. As I've said in my earlier videos, the K-bar knife was my first really good knife. And as a woods knife, it can be a good knife as long as you recognize the strengths and weaknesses of the knife. And so let's address those a second. One, the leather sheath that it comes in is a good feel sheath. If you live in a very wet environment, you may want to go with a more modern Kydex or plastic sheath. But for everyday carry, I like the leather sheath. I'm an old guy, I like tradition. Okay. The snap up here is not that great. This can be replaced by a much more robust snap. Okay, but it's weak intentionally. This was designed to be a combat/utility weapon for the military, Marine Corps especially. If you grabbed and snatched, it would let it come out in a combat without having to worry about the snap. That's the reason they have it kind of a weak snap. But this snap can be replaced. Notice it's two good loopholes that the retention strap goes through. This can be replaced by another piece of leather and a more robust snap if that's what you want. You can also fold them back inside and snap them out of the way together if you need to just make it a free floater. Okay? Now, the knife sheath needs to be coated in neat's foot oil or some sort of thing. Snow seal is good because it preserves and protects it from water, damage, and etc. I carry a Ranger band, a piece of rubber inner tube, and on the back I carry a diamond honing steel to be able to sharpen my knife in the field. Just my personal preference. And also on the loop I take a piece of bank line and I tie a pretty good loop, as you can see. This allows me at home I hang it up on a display nail so I can grab my gear quickly. But it also becomes very handy in the field because I can run a pole through it to pass the knife to something far away or some other thing. Or I can hang it up handy to me whenever I'm using it without having to use the belt loop. A little modification. Okay. The K-bar knife, and this one was made by Ontario, U.S. military issue. Now I've already done one modification to this. I'm about to do the others, but I want you to see. As it comes, it has a cross guard here that comes all the way across to here, about that wide. This was to protect your hand in combat so that when you stabbed, your hand didn't run up on the blade. It's good. However, that top part keeps you from choking up on the blade. Thus, like on my original, it's been removed. I cut it off with a hacksaw and simply rounded it. Now I can choke up, as you can see, on the blade for better, more precise work. Batoning. This is a rat tail tang knife. The knife necks down to a small little diameter rod that comes all the way to the base cap and then is pinned. If you're going to baton it, this is not a good knife to baton, but if you're going to, you want to loosely use your fingertips to hold the knife and then whack it. Don't make a fist and hold it because it puts all the tension there at that rat tail joint and thus it wants to crack. So you want to lightly hold it and baton it. Next modification. You notice this tip? Notice how that tip curves back past the center axis. Again, this was meant to be a utility combat knife, and that tip and this sharpened false edge is for that purpose. For field work, it does not help. In fact, it's actually a detriment in field work, and I tell you why. This little tip, when you go to actually carve a hole, is actually sticking back when you hold the blade vertical. It's curved backwards. This is the angle to make the tip actually be vertical. So when you're trying to carve a board or make a hole, it's kind of wrong. A spear point is a better blade. Plus, this sharpened back edge right here is not a good thing when you're trying to skin something, because you want to put the edge underneath the skin and slide along the meat, and this cuts into the meat. Like the old saying, a double-edged blade cuts both ways. It's cutting your meat as you're trying to take the skin off. That's not what I want to do. I want to have my meat in one piece so that I can cook it more efficiently and it's not hacked to pieces. So this edge, really for field work, needs to be dull. Also, and it can be a good 90 degree, but it needs to be dull so that when I can put a ferrule rod up there and throw sparks without having to worry about my edge. Also, the back here, I want to take a file and make this into a 90 degree spine so I can hook my ferrule rod right there and throw a good shower of sparks. Now, the only advantage to that knife point that I'm aware of is something I'm about to point out to you about the pommel. Now, my uncle taught me this trick, the one I've mentioned before, that was a Marine in World War II. And he said he learned it from a Marine at the Marine base in California. And it was to use this knife as a navigational aid. Okay? This big pommel right here, which it was for pounding tent stakes, they said. What he did was, and I've done it on this one, but you can't see it in detail, he marked a clock face on it. 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, etc. all the way around. So this is a clock face. Now, as a navigation aid, I realized that sunup is around 6 a.m. I realized that each of my 4 fingers counts for 15 minutes of time. So if I put the bottom of my hand on the horizon of the ground, that would be sunup, 6:15, 6:30, 7 o'clock on the top, 7, 8, 9, 10. I can do time. If I know time and I've got a clock face, I know it's roughly 4 o'clock. I point 4 o'clock toward the sun. Half the distance from 4 o'clock to 12 o'clock is due south. Get what I'm saying? So as long as I can figure out the time roughly and say it's 4 o'clock, I turn the knife hand to where it's pointing toward the sun, stick it in the ground like that, stick it in the ground, whomp, and realize that half the distance to 12 right there, that is north-south. I can use it as a dead reckoning compass. Okay? The other thing that he did was on the bottom finger guard, he drilled a hole. I've not done this on this one. He drilled a hole because if you put it against your eye like this and rose up so that the edge right here just showed in it, it was the same peep sight like they used in the military at that time, which was a circle with a post in it. He would use it for sighting, for compass bearing. Now this does not work in the woods of Alabama. It won't work in Maine and several other places. But apparently in the deserts of California it works really well. But he would, using this, figuring out the time, he would then figure out north and south. He would draw out the compass on the ground. He would then stand facing in the direction he wanted to go, and he would bring the knife up like this, bring it up, and use that sighting notch to pick a target way over yonder as his sighting point. That boulder, that cliff, that tree, whatever. That's like the thin little gap you've got in a compass. And that wire, that's what he was using it for. He would use the finger guard and the edge, bringing it up to where the edge became the bottom post. Stupid little trick, right? I'll be honest with you, I haven't been able to try it out because I'm in the woodlands. We see distance in feet, not in, 10 miles to the other side of that valley. I can see it would be useful to have a sighting device just like it is on a compass. But that allows the K-bar to act as a compass when you don't have a compass. By telling the time, using it, sticking it in the ground, drawing out my cardinal points, and then using it to sight at my target to get me walking in a straight line toward that target. When I got there, I did the process over again. So it's a dirt compass. Now, The modification that needs to be made to this knife to make it a better tool in the field is this false edge needs to be dulled. This tip where it curls back needs to be removed. Now what you want to do is take a file, put the file on that back edge so that, you see, if I don't know if you can see it, let me see. If you can see it up against me. There's a gap between that tip, see it, and this false edge right here. You want to put it and start grinding until that false edge disappears, till that edge disappears and it's one even bevel, which would be kind of like that angle. It would then be a tip very much like the Trident knife that you see. Now by dulling this back edge, it makes it a better knife for skinning. Now it will slide like a spay point over the meat without cutting it, while leaving the sharp edge to skin with. It'll also make it easier to put there and do this to waller a hole in a piece of wood for drilling, to make a, you know, a bow drill or something like that. Also to put notches for cords or whatever. That would be the modifications I would make. Would be changing the tip, dulling the back, taking a file and flatting me a 90-degree edge right there so it would work very well with a ferrule rod, removing the top part of the finger guard, marking a clock face on the pommel, and then putting a sighting notch either in the top edge right here of the finger guard or drilling a small hole. It'd probably be easier just to take a file and put a little notch so that it could be used out west for a sighting device for long-range sighting. That, my friends, is my little take on the K-bar knife. It's a good knife. It's a good feel knife, as long as you keep in your head that it is not a chopper. It's a knife. You can baton with it if you loosely grip it and hit it and you use small stuff. It's a good knife that can keep you alive in the field, that can do a good job. And with a few little modifications, it can be even more of a useful tool. Hope you like this video, guys. Please leave your comments, questions, suggestions. I'd love to hear from you. I'm Blackie for Shaman's Forge Bushcraft, wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.